Hey, everybody, off the Mike Sports Network here. So the NBA Finals are set. I didn't get a chance to talk about this because, need to let it marinate a little bit. Um, Rest in peace to the NBA on TNT. They had a great run. We'll see how the inside of the NBA looks on ESPN. So might do a separate video on that. But I wanted to talk about a very interesting subplot that is played out in front of our eyes that nobody has really recognized until it became official that Oklahoma City is going to face Indiana in the NBA Finals. A lot of people are going to focus on the ratings, and a lot of people are going to focus on, this is a pretty monumental mismatch. Oklahoma City should win this series. But Paul George is a name that we have not talked about in a long time because he didn't have a great first season in Philadelphia. The fingerprints of Paul George and the remnants of Paul George are going to be littered over the series to the point where I hope that ESPN, in some capacity, gets Paul George as like a guest commentator or a guest analyst in some capacity. Because it is incredible how much that Paul George's fingerprints are all over this series. Because let me take you guys back to when Paul George he was an Indiana Pacer. He was drafted by them. Took them to a couple of conference finals. Lost to Miami. Okay, and he had a decent run with the Pacers. He was then traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. Those were the two main pieces in that. So you may say to yourself, okay, Mike, what the hell does that have to do with any of this? Okay, so then, indulge me again, in the summer of 2019, Kawhi Leonard wanted to go to the Clippers, but he needed another star. So the Clippers traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a bunch of draft picks to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Paul George. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is now the MVP of the NBA and one of the best players in basketball, no matter how you feel about him as a flop artist. And one of those draft picks, in addition to that, turned into J-Dub, Jalen Williams, one of the better two-way players in the NBA, one of the stars of that big three in Oklahoma City. Then you go to the summer of I think it was the trade deadline in 2022. Well, actually, let's go back to 2020. The Sacramento Kings took Tyrese Halliburton. And then in 2022, the Sacramento Kings wanted to build around De'Aaron Fox. They traded Tyrese Halliburton to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis, who was a part of the Paul George trade. And here we are. Tyrese Halliburton is now in the NBA Finals, having an incredible run. He broke the heart of my Cleveland Cavaliers. And here we are. Paul George literally is a big reason why both of these teams are in the NBA Finals. Because loosely, the whole Indiana Pacers piece of this thing, by the way, separate of that, what the fuck were the Sacramento Kings doing? Because they wanted to build around De'Aaron Fox. They didn't see it in Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton goes to the Pacers, and now De'Aaron Fox is with the San Antonio Spurs. So that's not what this is about. But Paul George, if you're Paul George right now, like seriously, ESPN has a huge opportunity. Paul George, what does it feel like to have your fingerprints literally littered all over this? Your two former teams, and then almost every piece of the trade that involved you, a trade that involved you, is now a part of this NBA Finals. How does that feel? Like, that's a piece of this Finals that, like, yeah, obviously you want to talk about, like, the players on the court, and I think this actually could be an interesting series if Indiana can take care of the ball and make shots. This could actually be kind of an entertaining series. I still think Oklahoma City wins it in, like, I would say 6 games. I don't think this is a 7-game series. And if Indiana's not careful, they might get swept or gentlemen swept. But, again, the Paul George piece about this, I was thinking about it. Like, we already knew that, hey, Oklahoma City and Indiana are two of his former teams. But then I went back and I give credit to some people on social media and basically saying, hey, piece of the trade that got him to Oklahoma City, Domantas Sabonis, is a reason why Tyrese Halliburton's in Indiana. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the cornerstone piece of the trade that sent him to the Los Angeles Clippers, is now the MVP of the NBA. One of the draft picks of the trade that still hasn't been fully figured out, Jalen Williams, is one of the 2 or 3 best players on the Oklahoma City Thunder heading into this NBA Finals. So man, Paul George spent a lot of his career trying to win an NBA championship. Does he try to claim a championship? Because, this is the Paul George finals, man. And I think ESPN is really missing an incredible opportunity to bring this guy in as a guest analyst. Hell, I'd rather listen to Paul. I'd rather listen to what Paul George has to say. He's a podcaster. I'd rather listen to what he has to say than Stephen A. Smith or Kendrick Perkins. Fuck, bring in TNT's people as an early precursor to what we're going to get in the NBA next year. Yeah, and listen, am I a little bit butthurt? Separate of that, like, I don't know if anybody really gives a shit about this, but hey, this is the Off the Mic Sports Network. Um, am I a little bit mad that the Cavs, hey, does it suck that the Cavs, could have potentially been in this spot? I don't think they were going to beat Oklahoma City in a 7-game series. Could they have beaten Indiana if they were fully healthy? Maybe. Indiana's been playing like one of the best teams in the NBA since the start of the year. So, congratulations to them. Tyrese Halliburton's really certified himself as one of the best players in the league. This will be, I think, the best, basketball finals for the NBA because, these two teams have been playing like two of the best teams in the NBA the entire postseason. So that's what you want. In terms of like, marketability and, viewership, this is not good. There's no two ways about it. This is not a good matchup for the NBA if you're talking about viewership. From a basketball perspective, this could be a really good series. I don't see it going beyond 6 games because I think Oklahoma City is just that much better than the rest of the NBA. And that's been displayed really since, Denver tested them. And they still were able to overcome a lot. And that showed me, I think, that this is the best team in the NBA. As much as we don't want to like the flopping or, the way that this team acts or whatever, or their fan base, whoever, that's the other piece of this. But above all else, I think one of the most fascinating things that's going to play out in these NBA finals is like how much, one player in Paul George really has affected the course of this NBA and, has played a role in this finals. By the way, couple other notes, little nuggets here that you guys may have not heard. I believe this is the first time since 2008, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's the first time in a minute in I'd say at least 15 years where neither one of these teams played on Christmas Day. Both these teams are also underneath the luxury tax threshold, which just does not happen. So it really shows you the new NBA and how things are. And these are really young and exciting teams. So yeah, am I mad that, Indiana, the team that beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, are in this finals? Sure. Am I mad Oklahoma City, the team that was neck and neck with the Cavs for the best team with the best record in the NBA the entire season, they're playing for a championship? Sure. But hey, this is going to be fun basketball. There's the incredible storyline, like I said, where all the remnants of a trade involving Paul George affected this. Halliburton and, the Sacramento Kings and their botched job of how they totally mismanaged their organization. But, this is going to be interesting. I hope I'm wrong. I think it's going to be Oklahoma City in 5, maybe 6. But maybe Indiana makes this interesting. And I hope that the NBA and I hope that ESPN talks about this series like it's actually going to matter and they actually hype up these two teams as two of the better young teams in the NBA rather than focus on the flopping, rather than focus on the, bad media market piece of this. The Knicks aren't there. And, I really hope that this gets hyped up better than that. But again, just for a fun media, storyline, like I said, bring in Paul George. I think that would be really funny to get his perspective on hey, listen, man, everything that you were traded for is a piece of this NBA finals loosely or, directly if you're talking about the SGA part of this. So I'd also love to, hey, Clippers, Kings, what do you think about this? So it's going to be fun. So we'll have a couple days to talk about it here before it gets underway on Thursday. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.